All right. Welcome to the Social Say Podcast number 4. We got Jimmy from Motel Breakfast.
What up?
How's
Thanks
it
for
going,
having
Jimmy?
me.
Thanks for coming over. Jimmy was just over talking about LLC stuff with Motel's band and my band starting an LLC really soon here.
It's the most glorious part of being in a band is the legal part and the registering with the state part. It really makes the creative juices flow.
No, definitely learned a whole bunch in the last 30 minutes here, so I'm excited to dive into it. But cool, little background on Motel Breakfast. So what do you do at Motel Breakfast and what is Motel Breakfast?
Yeah, so I am Jimmy. I'm on most songs, the lead singer and rhythm guitarist. And Motel Breakfast, it started kind of back in the end of high school. Myself and Mick O'Donnell started playing a little bit together, and we met Connor Brennan, keyboard player, and Jesse Mazadowski, drummer, just through kind of mutual friends in our same neighborhood where we grew up. And we slowly started trying to schedule getting together as a band, and we formed in.
How long is it?
So the December 30th of 2016 was the first time those four of us, played a show together.
Gotcha.
And then we put out our first project in December of 2017. Weekends and Holidays was an EP that we did back then, and. Since then, in 2018, we met Drew DeVente, who's our bass player now. Drew's the man.
He's got the whitest, straightest smile I've ever seen.
The most photogenic man I've ever come across.
Beautiful man.
Yeah, so he went to school with Mick at Madison, and they linked up there, and then that's how kind of Motel Breakfast as it is today.
Because was Mick doing bass for a little bit before
So
that?
I played bass on everything. Okay. I played bass on Weekends and Holidays, and I still have a soft spot for bass. I'm trying to angle more into some of our unreleased songs I'm playing bass on. I'm quite excited. And then we had another buddy who Mick knew from Madison, Croy Kimmel, who played bass with us for a little bit there. Him and Drew actually joined the band effectively at the same time. Croy had to step away and just is out doing his thing still a very close friend. But so Croy recorded bass for a couple singles we did in 2018. And so Drew didn't get on recording with us until our album came out in 2020.
Yep. And going back to 2020, from what I know, through my close homie, shout out Keith McAllister, Uncle Keith. He basically takes photos for Social Singing Motel, and I met him, and he talks very highly of you guys. And through him, he was basically saying that y'all had all this momentum, and then you had a sold out album release show. Where was that?
So we did 2 album releases. We did a Thursday night in February of 2020 at High Noon Saloon in Madison. That wasn't sold out, but it was real strong attendance. We were feeling great. Next night we did Reggie's Rock Club in Chicago, sold out a 400 cap room. And sold it out and then some, had a bunch of people at the door that couldn't get in. It was an unreal feeling. We played a smaller show in Milwaukee at the now defunct Pab's Tap Room.
Oh yeah.
On March 12th, and then the world shut down.
That's the worst fear for. I mean, it hit everybody differently. That thinking of me being in a similar spot with our album release and everything going on right now. I couldn't imagine having all that momentum and then just.
It was honestly a lot to process. It was an emotional roller coaster, and it was a few months into the pandemic for me trying to process just things that happened, and only a couple months prior to that, at the end of 2019, I went through a big breakup. There were a lot of emotions that were going on at at the time, but frankly, I look back on it, I think all of us in the band look back on it kind of thankful, because we know people that weren't in as good a situation. It felt like we were successful enough to go like with a high into the pandemic, but not so successful that we lost opportunities. Like we weren't booked at South by, and that had to get canceled. I know people that like thought they were about to get their big break and had tours down to South by booked and were talking to labels,
Right.
and you know they can't tour a new album, and so a label doesn't want to put it out, and things just start to kind of trickle away there. The more time goes on, the more thankful I am that shit happened to us how it did, because we were not too far in for it to be so soul crushing.
Right. And you guys obviously rebounded really solidly. They just played a sold out. Well, you guys had the Cool Guy tour. The Cool Guy tour of summer 2022, and then ending it with the sold out Lincoln Hall show.
Yeah, in Chicago.
How was the tour? Like, how was
it was
general great. And highs and lows and everything that happened?
Yeah, so you know, it's funny booking a tour, so to speak. Like it really only felt like we had about a week that was like a tour where it was like back to back doing things, and then otherwise it was effectively just like our summer schedule. A little peek behind the curtain, a lot of bands post tour schedules and dates are spread out by multiple weeks and shit. So we were just like, why not? We're just gonna call every show we played this summer the tour. But like, it was a lot of fun. The real meat of the tour was really cutting through the heartland of Wisconsin, doing High Noon Saloon with Social Sig, and who was the other band? Why am I blanking right now?
Blue County Pistol.
Yes,
Yep.
Social Sig and Blue County Pistol, and then we did Appleton's Mile of Music for the next 3 days. 5 shows in 3 days, which was wild but fantastic. And then we did Cactus Club on a Monday night.
I heard that was bumping.
That was awesome. That was so much better than I ever would expect for a Monday night show with Bug Moment. It was awesome. It was a very affirming feeling that like, so that what feels like the meat of the tour was those like 5 days, and then Lincoln Hall like a week and a half later capping it off. And yeah, affirming is the word that I just keep coming back to, because it was like people coming out to the shows and meeting so many great bands, you know, like Social Sig. You guys were a group that we'd been like in the same orbit. We knew of each other for so long, but never set anything up. You know, playing Appleton, it was like an opportunity to build momentum. And so like by the end of the weekend, you've got people that are coming out to multiple shows, and people are, every show out there is free and to attend. And so they all show up with money in hand ready to buy your merch if they love you. And so we made a killing on merch, and people are wanting to hear more from us and following us throughout the weekend. And then coming home to like Cactus Club feels like a second home to us. And yeah, affirming is just what I come back to.
Crazy on a Monday night too, to bring like a crowd in. Well, like it really depends on the show, but I mean, because stuff happens on Monday nights, but getting people to a show on Monday night is always so tricky.
It is, dude. And it's
tricky.
Like, yeah, the whole thing, so Motel has not done much touring because, well, as we talked about, we finally were getting wind under our sails in early 2020, and shit shut down. So this is kind of our first time that we're trying to get out there and do tours and make more of a name besides just our local reputations.
For sure.
And I don't know, there's a different feeling when you know nobody in the crowd and people are still there and they're still vibing with it and they're still like giving you the energy back, and people are coming up to you at the merch table and saying how cool the show was. And I don't know, I think I've gotten so used to knowing so many faces in the crowd, you know, playing a show in Milwaukee, in Chicago, texting people to be like, hey, come out, I hope to see you, we got big shit in store. And to just not be able to like do the personal promotion and have to rely on kind of your reputation getting out there
Right.
was a risk that was very, it was a very safe risk. We didn't do that much with new places, but it still, again, just was affirming. It like has us juiced up to be like, I'm booking a new tour right now that's gonna take us much bigger in the winter.
Yep, beautiful. I know, like, because when it starts out, it's like you text all your homies, you get your homies to the shows. But I've been on a similar path with like playing Madison a few times, and people you don't know like come into shows consistently and be like, yo, I was at that show. Like, holy shit, and like trying to remember their names and trying to build a connection with them is really, really special. It feels weird this summer to like accept that like those are fans.
Yeah, no, like very real ways.
Oh, I have fans.
I first had that experience back in August of last year. We played, or no, it was December of last year. We played a gig with Sleepy Gaucho, who was the homie, at Cactus Club. And there were a lot of faces in the crowd I knew, but a good chunk I didn't. And I was sitting outside the venue right after the show, and these two women came up to me, and they're like, you're the lead singer of Motel Breakfast, right? And I was like, yeah. And so they said, oh, we heard your song on 88.9, Yelling at the Moon, and like that we heard it in the car together, like right after our first date, and it's become something that we like have as like a relationship song. And so like, thank you so much. And I'm getting chills right now talking about it. That was the first time that I was like, these people I've never met before have like a real emotional connection to things that we created.
Right.
And that Shout Out Radio Milwaukee, they are riding so hard for local Milwaukee art, and the fact that they, give bands like us those time slots, and people are hearing us on their drive home from first dates and making emotional connections to our music.
Yeah, like you're a playlist to somebody's life.
Yeah, literally. They told me like, this is a song that's tied to our relationship intrinsically. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. The power that music has in general is just like it can go so many different ways and such positive ways too. It's really coming as an artist, like that's all you could ask for real.
Truly, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. And
so it's exciting. It's wonderful. I'm loving seeing how successful Social Sig has been lately. Shout out Social Sig. Just sold out the Collectivo back room.
That was the same night that y'all sold out the Lincoln Hall show. So, have you played a show since?
No, we have not. It's been just kind of coming down from that. Lincoln Hall was a pretty big one.
How was like the come down from like playing a solo? Because we have like talked with Bug Moment and Scam Likely, the bands that played that show. Yeah. A few days afterwards, we're like, whoa.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, the more intense come down was that first sold out show in February 2020. But like I said, it was also tied to all these other emotions that I was going through at the time. But so I kind of like had processing the sold out show was at least not brand new. Right. So the come down wasn't as intense as it was that time. However, this was a bigger room than that, and we had one less band on the bill. Only doing a 2-band bill is risky. Yo. They do not recommend you to do a 2-band bill as a local band if you're trying to sell a room out. But we were like, no, we need to flex our draw. But we also played with these crazy talented people from Chicago, Frico. Shout out Frico. Okay. And they brought a great draw themselves as well. And it was a really strong, like tighter bill. I think the come down from it was, I don't know, like grateful. It was so. Yeah. That was another thing that was very affirming because I've seen so many shows at Lincoln Hall. Here's an example for you. Have you ever been to Lincoln Hall?
Never been to Lincoln Hall.
So it's this beautiful room, and one of the kind of calling cards of it is right in the middle of the live room. On the wall is a big like lit up LH. Yep. And so I've seen countless photos of people like in the back of a venue, and it's just a sea of heads and the lit up LH and some band that I love playing on the stage. I've stood in that room and looked at that countless times. And then like there were moments in the days afterwards that I was looking at photos and I was like, that's me on that stage in this photo I've seen hundreds of times. That was fucking crazy to realize. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and well deserved too. Like it's you. One thing that I kept reminding myself and the other bands along before the show is that like we deserve to be here.
Yeah.
You know, there's not like we put in the work to be here where we are, and it is part of the journey.
Yeah,
So.
and like you gotta. A huge part of it is being proud of it, like you said, knowing that you have put in work to get somewhere and that it's coming back to you and that what you're making is like kind of being affirmed to you. Apparently affirm is my word of the podcast.
Yeah, I like that one. I don't have to use it.
But it's also like, oh man, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I kept using the word, shit. Surreal.
Surreal,
Using the word surreal. Affirming is also very strong, like encapsulating those feelings.
Yeah, because I mean, to grind away as an unknown artist is really so much of dreaming and so little of realizing. And I'm learning more and more as I know more artists and see artists like actually have like moments of success, that the switch can flip pretty dramatically and pretty quickly from lots of dreaming and not a lot of realizing to like everything happening really quickly and it being difficult to catch up with it. So, here's where I was kind of trying to go before that. It is, I think, really important to be present in these moments. You know, when you're selling out a room and like hitting a goal and being like, wow, I can't believe we're here. I'm here with my friends and we are doing this together. And I'm here with all these people that like are so wonderfully like supporting what I'm making and they have no need to be supporting what I'm doing. So that presence is something that I'm really trying to be intentional about. I started with the Cool Guy Tour. I started keeping a tour journal now, and I'm just writing down every show, who was on the bill, who some of the people were there, and like how it all felt.
And one day you'll look back at it and just be brought back to those moments.
Yeah, it's something that I think helps for being present. Even just if I never were to look back at it, going a couple days later or a couple weeks later and reminding myself how the night was and how different things played out and what different people's names were. It kind of reiterates like how to be present, because I feel like, you know, if we get what we want as artists, it becomes a very transient lifestyle with lots of faces and lots of kind of doors that you're going through and faces that you're passing. But being present still needs to matter. And you need to know how to make the room small that you're in, you know. The person running sound that night has to be the most important sound person, and you got to be appreciative of them. The person running the door and running security, you should be present like with everything. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's some really good advice too, because I have been keeping journals for a few years now. This last year I wasn't great at being super consistent with it, but like you're saying, it feels life has been moving way faster than it ever has these days. But being able to just sit down and decompress in a long writing form has always helped me a lot. Just getting it out. Almost.
Do you like set kind of like, I journal today kind of rules on yourself, or is it more I have stuff to write and then you start writing?
I make a goal list every day, and one of the things that I always put is write. And I don't do that every day. I don't hit that every day, but when I'm intentional about writing, usually it's these days have been bigger events, which I want to get more in a better habit of doing it just every day, but it's hard to make time.
It is, and well, I think I'm trying to learn how to be patient with myself, and you know, it's okay to not be upset, like, I didn't journal today. Like that's why for me, it feels like a very manageable goal of, every single show that you play, you can write a little bit about it in your journal. And that's a very like approachable
Totally.
structure, I think.
Yeah, and it's not even like you have to write a whole thing. It's just
Yeah.
a couple notes.
And hey, like obviously Lincoln Hall was like 4 pages that I wrote.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
a lot of the other gigs were just like a page, a little blurb about the people and things. It doesn't need to be a lot, but forcing you to kind of be present
Totally.
a second time.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about is songwriting. So are you like the main songwriter as far as like what is your process?
Yeah, so well, real quick, Motel Breakfast wise, all 5 of us are writers at this point, which
Okay.
is pretty exciting and fun. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways that songs can form. However, I have been like, for the duration of Motel Breakfast, I've considered myself a writer. And you know, it kind of started out as Mick and I's songs and Connor's songs were the first ones that entered the bunch, and now Drew and Jesse are also pretty active writers. So it's become a pretty kind of symbiotic creative relationship for all of us. But as far as me personally, writing is one of those things that is very fleeting. You know, I'm not one of those writers that says like I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write today. Like it's like a song a week or one of those things. I'm patient with myself, maybe to a fault, but I've realized that I have like I'd say an average of like 6 full songs a year, but it's like 6 songs that I feel fucking dynamite about.
Right.
And so like that's a pace that I'm very comfortable with because I live a lot of my life at quicker paces than that. And I'm very okay with being patient with the creative side. So for me, writing...
Yeah, what is that process just for you?
Yeah, well, I consider myself a writer before I consider myself a musician.
Cool.
So a lot of it is based in... Well, a lot of it's based in following impulse and following trains of thought. But also it's based in intention. So to kind of roundabout give an example that I always think of, if it feels like my creative process is healthy, something that I will do is if I'm on a run, just doing a casual workout and maybe like a melody comes to my mind or a couple lines that rhyme come to my mind, I should be stopping myself in my tracks. I should be recording that melody into my phone or writing a couple lines into the notes app, and that oftentimes doesn't become a song, but it's allowing myself to be open to where my mind wanders. I think a lot of my creativity starts in letting my mind wander and trusting it, but then forcing my conscious mind to try and reel it in. So I think a lot of it comes word and melody first, and then music second. I'm not a very music-based writer. However, oftentimes I'll try to work with, say Mick has a song, and he'll compose an entire thing, verse, chorus, bridge. He's got this whole thing built, but maybe doesn't have lyrics anywhere, and I'll just walk around with that in my ears and kind of flip it together.
Yeah. So one thing that I keep hearing for a lot of, it's different for everyone, but like when you have a lyric that pops into your head, do you kind of like stop and be like, oh, it's a good one, and build off that lyric? Or do you kind of like, I've noticed with some Motel Breakfast songs, like you'll kind of paint like a story.
Yeah. So I would say if I don't feel like there's anything there, I don't force it, even if I think it's one of the coolest lyrics I've come up with.
Fair.
That's something that I really try hard to do, is not force it. And that's why I've become very comfortable with that casual pace of songwriting. So a lot of it does become story oriented. And that's a very natural way of songwriting. A lot of it also, I've tried to allow myself to maybe let it be less rigid than that. Maybe like verse 1 is a certain story, and verse 2 and 3 and the choruses is a totally different story. That was something that actually I remember being in college and listening to the Front Bottoms and realizing there were so many of their songs that like the entire like first minute and a half is just something that like jars you. like the song "Father" is what comes to mind. I don't know if you're a Front Bottoms fan.
I'm not familiar.
So the Front Bottoms, the song "Father" starts out with this line: "I have this dream that I'm hitting my dad with a baseball bat, and he's screaming and crying for help." And then like the entire like first verse is kind of about this like dream, but then the rest of it's about like almost like a breakup or wanting to be someone for a person in a relationship that you don't feel like you can be or that you're being allowed to be. And I was like, that has nothing to do with having a dream about your dad and hitting it with a baseball bat. But it's okay, and I don't dislike the song. And so something that I've tried to also be aware of is that I can have kind of separate story threads that merge into the same song, and I don't need to explain to myself or to other people why they fit in the same song.
Right.
So I think that's something that I'm trying to incorporate even more, is that like transience to like a story you don't need to trust the author as me, because I'm not going to give all of my writing a proper timeline or even a proper like story that it fits with.
Right. That's a beautiful thing about being a songwriter, is that there are no like right ways to do it. As long as like you like what you're doing, and if you fuck with it, then like who really cares at the end of the day?
Yeah. How do you approach songwriting?
I always start on acoustic guitar for the most part, just messing around with chord progressions. So I think usually depending on where I am with my life, so kind of going back and how like often I write, I'm usually pretty consistently just jamming on my guitar almost every night. And if there's something really appealing, and when I'm jamming on the guitar, I'll find like a cool chord progression. And I think the guitar is a really good instrument for me to get out like whatever is like bothering me, and then humming like a melody along to it. And then if I find like something pretty catchy I like, I put down my phone, hit record on the voice memos, and then just try to find just kind of just like let my mind just go blank and just like and just like let it out. And then I'll re-listen to it, and if I hear like a good lyric, that's when I'm like, oh, there's something here. Kind of like dive into it again, maybe like a day later, and just really dive into structuring the song, and then taking that and then putting it into a song.
Yeah. Do you, so would it, to try to rephrase what you said, would you say it's usually you try to kind of freeform it until you find something that's like, oh, I want to build off of that building block? Or do you ever try to like patchwork it together from things that you've been riffing on?
Yeah, I usually think it's all pretty one concise thing. I feel like very rarely I'll have a concise thing and then have another thing that I have and drag it over. If anything, it'll be like another idea, but I really like the way the guitar sounds here, but I'll put it in this key and put it here and change the lyrics up. So it's like small influences from different things that all kind of come together in one song. But for the most part, it's usually like what you're saying with having different ideas come into one thing. I think I've always looked at it where like it has to start and finish and has to be like some sort of like one piece. That's actually really good advice to kind of, as a writer, to kind of go outside of that.
Yeah, because I feel like I've relinquished some of the control, and it allows a lot more interpretation when you don't necessarily have to always be a trustable narrator.
Fair.
And I think that makes it really interesting to listen to songs too, from a fan perspective. Well, another thing though, that one of the newer ways of writing that I really enjoyed, so the new single that we put out, MBs in Modern Baseball.
Good track, by the way.
Thank you.
Very youthful sounding at first and very upbeat. I like it.
Thank you, yeah.
And you have that long, like, I don't know if it's an O or an Ah, but you have a long part there that like really builds. And I remember you doing that live. Did you do that at my new?
Yeah,
I remember that
did.
part in the show, like specifically.
And it was, well, so that part, when we were writing it and practicing it, I was determined that I wasn't going to sustain the note, but the idea we had was the trumpet was going to basically overtake the vocal line. And so like the trumpet would start playing the same note and we would kind of crossfade them.
Sure.
And so we were in the studio and it was like, all right, just record one, like really sustaining it and we can work on it later. And I got all caught up in it and Mick even caught a video of it. I don't know if he's posted it on like TikTok or something. He might have. I'm not on our TikTok.
Yeah.
But he got a video because I then started just like getting really into it, and then the whole scream happened, and it was just like I didn't plan for that.
Yeah.
And it worked. We kept it in.
Yeah.
It felt really good. It gave it a real oomph at the end.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a cool one. And that's one of those things like you can't micromanage the studio session too, because sometimes cool things come out when you're not thinking so hard.
Right. You're not forcing it, and it was really in the moment.
Yeah.
It was very natural, I guess.
Yeah. But the songwriting for that song is something that was really exciting for me because it was a totally new approach where Mick basically came up with the riff. I came up with the first 2 lines, and I started it off as like a joke and was like, I kind of like those lines.
What were the lines again?
I'm trying to wash the dirt off my hands, but I'm not doing so well. I've been looking for direction, but the signs keep pointing back to hell.
Okay, yep.
And so I was just kind of like riffing shit while he was playing guitar in the living room, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And then we started while we were practicing for a show. This was like last November. They started piecing together, like Jesse was putting together drum parts and Drew and Connor were playing to it, and everyone started piecing together composition. And basically over like maybe a dozen or 10 practice takes, I just never wrote anything down but those first 2 things. We recorded every single one, and it was completely off the dome, like freestyling.
Wow.
Then I went back in the next couple days, and I sat down and I wrote. Well, I listened back to each one, and I pulled out little phrases I liked, and then I pieced the song together like that.
Yep.
And so I started to kind of form a narrative with different. I like that line. Can I put that line there?
Yep.
And of course, my subconscious ends up showing me that it's just a song about Max that I ran into recently. So I can never really. Your subconscious puts it there. But that was the first time that I kind of relinquished total control from the songwriting process and was like, I'm just gonna completely freestyle it. And that's something that I'd always done as a creative exercise. Me and Mick will just kind of riff on things, and I'll make up lyrics all the time. That's something that we've done for years. And so for me, it was almost just trying to get ready to write the song. But then as I was listening back, I was like, I think the song's here. I just gotta find it.
Right. So is that gonna be a single off a new project?
Great question.
Of Motel Breakfast. So one question would be that you started going into before we started this podcast was what does Motel Breakfast have in store for the future?
Yeah, okay, so music-wise, it's a great question what we have in store. Frankly, it's a blessing and a curse now that all 5 of us are writers because we have a song backlog that's really difficult to approach. We don't really know how to pull together a single project. We're having a hard time prioritizing different things, and the approach that we've kind of come to at the moment now is just start cycling songs into practice sessions, and when they feel right, and we'll record them in chunks of a few songs at a time. And hopefully album 2 comes out of that. I'm sure album 2 is going to come out of that, but a lot of songs might just be standalone singles that we want to put out. A lot of songs might end up on a separate EP. Like, we're kind of trying to figure out what album 2 might look like now that all 5 of us are writers, and rather than getting too caught up in the weeds, which we had been doing for a while, we're just saying, let's make music and let's book studio sessions and let's record and make these songs, because it should all be about individual songs at the end of the day, and they are going to form a cohesive whole. And so we're parsing through that as we go. Maybe this MBAs in Modern Baseball will be on album 2. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be a standalone single. At the moment, it's just a standalone single. And we're going to have another standalone single called So Long drop in the next month or two. I don't know. We don't have it finalized. We're at the very tail end of post-production right now.
Cool.
But then we're just hoping to book more studio sessions in November and kind of keep the wheels moving. We got at least 2 more songs mostly done from a session in the spring.
Yep.
And then we got probably 10 more that could be recorded.
Cool. Do you have like, when you put together an album, do you have like a greater scheme of the whole album as a whole? And like, are you intentional about like the feel and the type of songs on there? Or is it all kind of modge podge, a little bit of here, a little bit of there?
So it's a lot just feel. And it's trying to strike that balance between not wanting to have an album that just sounds like the same song 10 times, and not wanting to have an album that feels completely disjointed. And I don't know if any artist can really say that they've properly figured out how to do that. Everyone convinces themselves of something that helps them put a bow on a project and push it out the door. I think it really, we're having a harder time answering that now that we have so much more to work with. When we made our first album, the self-titled, we probably left off like 4 songs that were done.
Sure.
And so it was easier to say, it feels like these 4 don't fit. And yet this is the album.
Did you still release those 4 songs ever, or those just kind of...
So 2 of them we did release. 2 of them were on Left on Deming, the EP that we made in the pandemic. It was Burrow, which we actually had a version that we recorded during the album sessions, but we scrapped it. And then it was Sandman, which was like, we played it live a few times, but we knew it just didn't feel like the vibe of the album. And then we had just a couple others that are ones that have sat around kind of in the background for a while, but they haven't seen the light of day yet. And so we had those, and it was much easier to decide, like, this is the album, this is not. But now that we have so many more songs, we're still in that phase of figuring out what does it mean. I just know that it needs to feel like a rich project to listen to start to finish. However, I think we're fooling ourselves if we try to make it anything, like claim it's some sort of like perfectly threaded thing. Like at the end of the day, it's 5 people trying to figure out life and creativity through their own lens.
Yep.
And the best thread that we have is they're the songs that Motel Breakfast plays right now.
That's a good way to put it, though. Like, if you just marketed the album as that, like 5 individuals just trying to use this as a creative outlet into the world, I think that's a good pitch in itself.
Thank you.
Especially those who have been following you and kind of know you as people, as an artist. It's I think people gravitate towards that genuine, I guess that songwriting and what you put through in your music.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd be curious actually to hear your thoughts on it, but I very much feel like the only way to make it and get people to buy into what you're doing at our level is to be as earnest as possible. And if you claim to be too much, if you claim to have all these kind of crazy ideas for what it is that you're making and how it is that you're an artist, people are not going to buy in as much. You have to kind of earn people's credibility in order to take larger artistic risks and expect them to go along with it.
What I wanted to make what I wanted to make a point in when I first started doing music was I just wanted to be authentic. Like I didn't want to be anyone else other than like me. And growing up in the past few years here, I hear all the time from whether podcasts I listen to or books that like authenticity sells. And I think that I've had a lot of good luck in really just trying to portray myself in an authentic way, in an authentic light, and just really dive into myself and what I like. And if I like it, from when I started, I was like, I'm just gonna make music for myself.
Yeah.
And if people like it, like that's just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
And then it just forms into like how you present yourself as a musician and as an artist in the internet, and then as like a live show. And at the end of the day, it's just like you are who you are. So, and I think that people these days really sniff out bullshit.
Yeah.
And you're just only gonna trick yourself. Like if you're buying like fake streams on Spotify and stuff or followers on Instagram,
So easy to see.
It's only gonna harm yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, you gotta build a real grassroots following. Shit doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
If you're not being authentic, shaking hands with everyone individually, saying thank you for coming out, thank you for listening. I actually was wondering when you were talking there, it made me think, when would you say the Social Sig project like properly started? Because I don't really know.
I would say 2018.
2018?
I was in a band in high school growing up. We played a good amount of shows from like 2011 to like 2015, 16. And
2011? How young were you when you started?
I was like 10 or, maybe not 2011. I was like 10 or 11 when we started, right when I started.
What was that band called?
Borderline.
Borderline?
Boarderline. Like we were all snowboarders. Big claim to fame for us. We opened for the Plain White Tees.
No shit.
Yeah, they came to our high school and they played in our field house and we got to open for them.
Did you get to meet them?
Briefly. They were, they didn't want to like really hang out with us. But we met them, which was cool. Yeah, we were all in high school. And I was the young guy of the group too. So my brother was on drums and then two dudes his age, Peter and Joey, guitar and bass.
Nice.
And then I was rhythm guitarist. So I really got a lot of experience doing shows at that young age and just being experienced to a lot. And then 2018 was when I really started recording music under Social Sig.
And you were at UWM?
Yeah. Just in my bedroom in college. And then just doing live shows. COVID happened and I really pushed back and stepped back and like what I wanted to do with everything. And then as things have been opening up, it's just been guns a-blazing, just doing.
Was that a conscious choice while you were sitting quiet in COVID that you're like, oh, I gotta go like gung-ho on it, I gotta really try?
Not really. I think I had 2 albums out. One album right when COVID happened, and then my second album was kind of like my COVID baby. I was really just working all 2020, 2021 to release it. And then
That thing that gave you purpose in the
pandemic. I also went through a pretty rough breakup, like end of COVID, and then COVID happened. There's this whole thing, and
when it rains it pours.
Oh yeah. And then as it started developing and just getting more familiar with the scene and rebuilding a scene, it just felt like I feel like none of us really even knew what we were doing. And I'm talking about like Bug Moment and Moon, like just so many scenes in the Milwaukee scene that we were all just trying to figure out what the scene was because it was a big reset.
Yeah, because I was completely separated from it once COVID ended. Because going to Marquette, I started kind of like engaging with the scene, became homies with everyone in Dogbed. Shout out Dogbed, still my favorite band. Shout out Carter, Ellen,
Isaac.
AJ, and Isaac. And actually, it was a cool thing. One of my favorite stories is that I feel like a contributing factor to why Dogbed formed, because they, as far as I understand it, formed around like Marquette had a battle of bands, and I was part of Marquette Radio's team setting that up, and so they sent in a submission video, and that was like their battle of the bands show was I think their first performance ever. And after that show, I remember approaching them. I think it was Carter and maybe Ellen that I approached after the set and was like, yo, you were so good. Would you want to play with my band in my basement here on campus?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like, they were our kind of gateway into the scene pre-COVID because that was much more based around UWM. And then COVID happened and totally Dogbed, everyone started kind of doing different projects and I kind of lost connection with the scene and was very curious like what it would be.
What's going on?
Yeah, and then that kind of jumps to where you guys have come out of COVID and really been building it.
See, that's interesting that you have that perspective because I remember when Dogbed was really in their swing.
At the Murray Attic.
Murray-Attic was going on, and I lived 2 doors down from the Murray-Attic, and I hadn't even done live shows with Social Sig until April of 2019. So, but really on a small scale, like guitar and cajon kind of thing. And I really had no idea of what the music scene in Milwaukee really was. I knew of like Fellow Kinsmen.
Shout out Nate.
Shout out
the
Nate.
man.
We're playing our first show with Fellow Kinsmen on the 30th. Super excited. And also a little dab of history. This used to be a venue back in the day.
This room?
Room 808.
No shit.
I don't know his name. I think his name is Dylan, actually. he was a guy who lived here 2 people before me, and he would host house shows here about once a month, maybe even more. But Dogbed had played here.
This would be a little room.
Kala played, and I know like Tlaluk, you know, Milton. So many shows going on here, so I feel very grateful to be in this room.
Oh, that's cool. It's a room with a lot of good juju.
Yeah. So it is. It has been interesting to really be more of a part of the Milwaukee scene and have a more like a better perspective on. It's like having a hand in rebuilding it.
Yeah.
It's been really cool.
Yeah, and it's been cool to watch. I feel like I've always had this third-party perspective to the Milwaukee scene because I've always tried really hard to be in it, but not going to UWM, there was an inherent way of not being in it. Because I lived in Milwaukee until August of last year. And so it was almost 8 years that I lived in Milwaukee. Milwaukee very much became my home, and I was like, if this is home, I'm really getting into the music scenes here.
Yeah.
But it was very kind of disjointed, and it would be meeting like everyone in Dogbed and other people, and there would be little connections, like meeting Andy Goitia, Sleepy Gaucho, who is the homie, Will Hansen of Old Pup.
Yeah,
but
Will.
all like
I see him around pretty often.
Yeah, but still, it was like I was never in the scene. It was just like certain people in various parts of the scene knew me, knew Motel Breakfast, and I don't know. It's always been a really interesting like angle that I feel like I've had, and it's been cool to watch. I don't know if you feel like this, but it almost feels like you're kind of a champion of the scene coming out of it now. Like, you've assumed a sort of role, which is kind of cool to watch from a third party.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many good bands in Milwaukee right now, like Diet Light, Bug Moment, Scam Likely. If you've ever catch Scam Likely,
I've heard they're wonderful.
They have been a band for 6 months, dude, and like they played the backroom show and absolutely fucking killed their set. Like, I don't know what it is, but they got something. Yeah, it's been really cool to be like, feel like a leader in all this like Milwaukee scene, because everything is so tight knit and everyone knows everyone in a way. And if you're on Sunday, actually, there's actually an artist meetup going on at Reservoir Hill, that big hill in the park.
What time?
I think 1 or 2. Just a bunch of bands are coming by, just hanging out, no music, just
mark me down for a maybe. No promises, but
I'll send you the flyer.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a.
I'll be crashing an Airbnb in Brewers Hill.
Oh, dude,
so,
like
it's right there.
Yeah, so it's I'm trying to get someone to bring a soccer ball. I had messaged the group chat and no one responded. So, anyone got a soccer ball? But yeah, man, it's been cool. So. I think I asked you pretty much everything I really wanted to ask you. Where do you see Motel Breakfast in 5 years?
Ooh.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I can answer Motel Breakfast easier than myself. Obviously, I would feel inherently tied to where Motel Breakfast goes, but something that every time these kinds of questions come up, I bring up the fact that I don't like or feel comfortable with like multi-year planning, because the future I'm trying to build for myself is very much I don't know, up to the winds of like a music industry life, and that's got a lot of question marks in it. And I try to keep myself open to where I would need to be in order to follow that mentally. But I mean, the real goal where I would see Motel Breakfast is having some sort of label support and having some sort of more national presence with our music, and having just a more steady life of touring. And
full time on music?
That's what I'd like to be.
Yeah.
But I'll be working my remote job for a while because I gotta chip away at the mountains of student debt that I got. So that's still gonna be cranking through that. But yeah, ideally it's Motel really takes off and we got a life out of it.
Yeah.
And everything is just trying to build a really strong foundation for that future.
You heard it here first. That was a very honest answer. So, should we wrap this up?
Yeah.
Awesome. Check out Motel Breakfast on all streaming platforms. And are you guys Motel Breakfast?
At Motel
Oh,
Breakfast.
wait. One question that I wanted to ask you. What does your Motel Breakfast look like if you were visiting a motel? Your ideal Motel Breakfast.
Well, if you're in the motel, there's nothing that's going to be provided. So you're piecing this shit together. If you're in the motel, you're probably operating on not that much flexible cash. So I'm guessing we got a Pop-Tart, some day-old coffee. Pop-Tart's cold unless they have a toaster in that motel, which they probably won't.
Probably don't.
Hey, you're gonna make it work. You're gonna go for sustenance. Maybe you got a Cliff Bar and a banana because you happen to find that at the CVS down the block. But if you can find some fresh hot coffee, that's just a perk, but not an expectation.
Beautiful, beautiful. Cliff Bar banana and a Pop-Tart is all you need. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Parker.
This has been super fun, and definitely check out Motel Breakfast. Peace, y'all. Thanks for listening. Bye.